Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Gajananam Bhudaganadi Sevidham Kavitta Jambho Balasarabakshitham Umasudam Soka Vinashakaranam Namami Vickneswara Pada Pankajam. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Jnananandamayam Devam Nirmalarspatikatrudhim Adharam Sarva Vidyanam Ayagrivam Yasyat Virada Vakradhyaya Parishatya Parashatham Vignam Nignam Ti Satatam Vishwashremam Tamashraye. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Gurave Sarvalokanam Visaje Bhavaroginaha Nidaye Sarva Vidyanam Sri Dakshinamurthaye Namaha. Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Sai Ishwararpanamustu. Om Ramanujadaya Patram Jnana Vairagya Bhushanam Srimat Venkatanathayam Vande Vedanta Deshikam Lakshmi Nada Samarambha Nada Yamuna Madhyamam Asmad Acharya Varyantam Vande Guru Parampara. Om Apatamapahataram Datharam Sarvasampadham Lokabhiramam Shri Ramam Bhuyo Bhuyo Namamyaham. Ramaya Ramabhadraya Ramachandraya Vedase Raghunathaya Nathaya Sithayam Pataye Namaha. Om Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane Ramanama Varanane Nama Ithi. Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramāyarpanamastu. Astika. Namo Namaha Suswagatam. Welcome and greetings. Thank you for joining me again this week as we move deeper into the essence of the Ramayana. Right? This is the third week. The first week we looked at introduction. The second week, last Sunday, we looked at Balakanta, all the activities that happened in this particular book of Balakanda, or the young times of Rama and indeed Lakshmana. So today we go on to something called Ayodhya Kanda. Right? Ayodhya Kanda is the book of Ayodhya, and this is the second largest chapter in Valmiki's Ramayana. Right? It's got 119 chapters. And I'd like to say, therefore, or emphasize that this is an important chapter because it's the turning point. You know, if you see a string and then you see a knot, even though the string is long, you don't see the length of the string when there is a knot in the string. You see the knot first. So if the Ramayana was a long piece of string, Ayodhya Kanda is the first big knot. So hence, it is very important, right? So do follow me and flow with me, right? Follow and flow. Now, take you back a little bit to Balakandam, to refresh your memory, right? A bit of reverse here. So the four brothers, of course, from the, from the forest, they went with Vishwamitra, they went to Mithila, and Rama participated in the Swayamvara. And of course, he won. He managed to lift the Shiva Dhanush, the Pinakini, right? And of course, the marriage was arranged, but then Vishwamitra said, hang on a minute. Rama's got two other brothers. You call your brother who's got two other daughters. You've got two daughters. So four brothers, four sisters. We'll get all of them married, right? So Rama was married to Sita, who was the subject matter of the Swayamvara. Lakshmana was married to Urmila, Sita's sister, and Bharata and Shatrughna married Mandavi and Shrutakirti respectively, right? After marriage, after all the festivities, they all returned to Ayodhya, obviously with the hope to live in joy, peace, and harmony. There's nothing to stop them anyway. That was, the beginning of all good times. Of course, Dasaratha was elated to have Rama back after, many years of absence. And Dasaratha was ruling. I think he ruled, Valmiki says, for another 12 years, right? Righteous ruling for another 12 years. One day when Dasaratha was, in his chambers, he was looking at the mirror and he went closer to the mirror and he happened to spot a silver hair. He's graying, okay? Now at that point, he thought, maybe it's time I handed over the throne to the next in line, who is of course Rama, who obviously as the firstborn was the crown prince, or what is known as the Yuvaraja. So basically, to go back a little bit, right? The seventh avatar, Rama avatar, came as a result of a necessity, right? To show that even as man, any ordinary person can aspire to be perfect or can aspire to attain perfection. So Rama was known as the perfect man because he had all the qualities when he was born. I told you all the stars were in alignment. So he was born with everything else except the knowledge that he is God and the powers that came with God, unlike Krishna. And I made that distinction with you. So once Valmiki was writing, as he was writing this Mahakatha, Ramayana, he stopped to ponder for a while. And as he was pondering what qualities shall he attribute to Rama, suddenly Narada appeared before him, right? So he was having a conversation with Narada. He says, oh, Rama, I'm just writing and I want to write about his qualities. He said, if you want to know Rama's qualities, better than me is Brahma, right? Because Brahma was in charge of the birth time, everything, right? So you better ask him. So as they propitiated Brahma, just thought, in those days, the thought was so powerful as it is today. But, sadly, people don't give thoughts that much of credence, right? Chitta is very much part of spiritual evolution. Chitta means thoughts, or memory. Anyway, the moment they thought of both of them, synchronized their thoughts to reflect on Brahma, Brahma appears, right? And if you can synchronize your thought at the level where your 7 chakras are in alignment and your 10 senses are in alignment, God will appear before you, right? Don't take my word for it. Just try it out, right? Anyway, Narada appears and he says, you want to know about Rama's qualities? Well, Rama has 16 qualities. Now, I want you to note the number 16 here, right? The 16 in the 7th avatar in Treta Yuga was the same 16 that was mentioned in the 8th avatar in Dwapara Yuga by Krishna to Arjuna in chapter 16. If you remember, I did chapter 16 with you. I spoke about the Deva, Asura, Sampat, right? Deva qualities, Asura qualities, right? So, Brahma says, Rama, he is a Gunavan. That means one who has got character, principles, right? Then he says, he's a Viryavan. He is a brave warrior, among the bravest. Then he said, he is Dharmaknya. Dharmaknya means of righteous conduct, righteous, calling. Then he says Kritaknya. That means he's a grateful person. Kritaknya, grateful person, gratitude, Then he says Satyavakyaha. That means he only speaks the truth. Dhridavrata, self-determined. Charitrena, immaculate good conduct, Sarvabhutashtahitaha. That means benefactor of all beings. Sarvabhutashtahitaha. Vidwan means all knowledge, right? Knowledge, knower of all arts. Samartha, competent, epitome of competence, right? Then he said he's Eka Priyadarshaha. Eka Priyadarsha means delightful in appearance, magnetic pull. The moment you see him, you're attracted. right? So Karishya, the magnetic pull, Then is Atmavan, is courageous, He's Jitakrodaha. Jitakrodaha means one who has the power to control and has conquered anger, right? Dyutiman. Whereas Lakshmana, you see, if you look at, if you go really deep into it, Lakshmana was always, acting on impulse, always getting angry. But Rama was always balanced. This is equanimity. Equanimity is Trikarana Suddhi as well, right? Equanimity in thoughts, words, and actions. When these are in balance, you'll be a balanced person, right? So always Rama is, suppressing Lakshmana, right? And if you go back to the original form, right, it is Lord Vishnu who's, resting on Adishesha. So he's always putting pressure on Adishesha. In the same way, Rama was always, exerting his influence on Lakshmana. So Chitakrodaha. Dyutiman, that means he's filled with splendor and brilliance, Tejas. This is very important. Anasuyakaha. Anasu, right? Asuyaka means jealousy or greed or envy, right? Anasuyaka means one who is free from jealousy or greed, right? So Rama was called Anasuyakaha. And the 16th one, right? This is the 16th quality. This is the most powerful. He say, Jataroshasya samuga devascha bipyati. Jataroshasya samuga devascha bipyati. When provoked to war, even the gods become fearful of this person. That is Rama, right? So, because he's a Viryavan, he's a brave man, isn't it? So, as he was writing Ayodhya Kanda, he was writing about Rama, and Valmiki wrote all of this, which is of course true in different parts of the Ramayana. As you will see, these qualities come up, in respect of Rama. So what is the significance of Ayodhya Kanda? Ayodhya Kanda has got 6 basic significance, right? 6 functions of Ayodhya Kanda. First is the primary installation of Sri Rama as king, right? Now, whether that happens or not is a different question, but one of the significance of Ayodhya Kanda is he was destined to be the king, the installation, right? And then subsequently, the drama that ensued as between Mantra and Kaikeyi involving Dasaratha, which ultimately affected Rama. This is the knot I was telling you about, right? It's a knot. Then the banishment. Off they go. Then the boatman episode, right? Now come back to this. This is main significance. The boatman episode. Then Bharata, when he comes to know, rejects his mother because of what she's done, and then goes seeking Rama. But that is essentially the main significance of Ayodhya Kanda. So Dasaratha, he saw this white hair, graying hair, silver hair. He calls his ministers. He has a meeting with them, and he says, I think I have ruled for long enough. It's time I crowned my dearest Rama as, Rajya, so that the Rama Rajya can begin. Of course, everybody is overjoyed because, they all loved Rama. And Rama grew up, for some time before he left. So everybody was waiting for Rama to come back. Now, of course, they're overjoyed because he's married, Lakshmana's married, Shatrugna's married, Bharata's married. So everybody was overjoyed. Then, of course, they call the palace astrologers, the advisors, and everybody agrees that, the next day, the first day they discussed, and then it was agreed that the next day is a very good day. It was Pushya Nakshatra, right? See, those days, everything was done according to times, good times, they say Amrita Kala, Labha Kala, like that. They looked at, of course, Yoga Kandam, Yama Kandam, all this mattered. And that's why things happened only at specific times, right? And they didn't have much problems back then. Anyway, the point is, Dasaratha said, tomorrow's Pushya Nakshatram, everything is in place. And I want the Rama Rajya Abhisheka to take place so that Rama can be coronated as king of Ayodhya. And he tells Rama, pay attention here. Dasaratha calls Rama and tells Rama, I want you to take over, and I want you to take over tomorrow so that I can continue my life to the 4th ashrama, sannyasa. I want to go and do tapasya. The point I want you to note here is, even in Satya Yuga or Treta Yuga, they were already practicing these 4 ashramas. So I want you to think that this is not a 19th century or 18th century or 20th century creation, right? This has been there, existing since time immemorial, since the Sanatana Dharma came into existence. 4 ashramas: Brahmacharya, Grahastha, Vanapratishtha, Sannyasa. So Dasaratha, having done 3, says, I want to go and do the 4th, please take over. And of course, Rama is not the kind of person to, go against his father. He says, Father, most definitely I will, comply with every wish. But at this time, my brothers, Bharata and Shatrugna, are not here. They are away on, palace business, and they're not in Ayodhya. They will come back in 4 or 5 days. Can we wait until they come back and then we all do it together? And Dasaratha says, no. Tomorrow is the date. Tomorrow is the time. Tomorrow is when this will take place. Now, despite Rama's request to wait for them, Dasaratha insisted that the coronation should take place tomorrow. So what I want you to see here is the mind. The mind of Dasaratha was very firm, right? So the point here is not the desire so that everything can come together and everybody can be together to do something. The point is the mind is saying, right? Because the mind will listen to the intellect when the control is exerted from the intellect to the mind, right? So the mind is saying, tomorrow is the day. And the intellect saying, yes, stick to it. Tomorrow is the day. Do not. And of course, Dasaratha says, no, tomorrow, right? And I've said this story about the mind, right? And I just want to repeat it because it is so poignant, right? To talk about how powerful the mind is. And because the mind is powerful, the thoughts are powerful. Because the mind and thoughts are powerful, the intellect is even more powerful because that's the controlling element, right? So this is the story of Vishwamitra once when he was, going with one of his shishyas. He came to a river, and before they could cross, they saw, a few, some yards down the river, there was a lady who was a crippled and who belonged to the lower caste, the Shudra. And she was there, and he could see, Vishwamitra could see that, she wanted to cross, but there was no way she could cross because she was crippled. So what he went to her, he carried her on his shoulder, he got into the river, crossed the river on the other side, put her down, took some water, splashed on himself, and continued walking. As he was walking, his shishya was very disturbed by what he has seen and what has taken place. So after some time, he couldn't control his desire to ask Vishwamitra. He said, the great Maharishi, I have a question. So Vishwamitra says, yeah, what is it? Of course, he already knew what the question was. He asks, what is it? And the Shishya says, how can you, a Rajarishi, Maharishi, Brahmarishi, go and touch this person of a lower caste and put her on your shoulder and, trek across the river? Isn't it a great, a dharma? And Vishwamitra says, my dear Shishya, right? It is very clear to me that although I have put this lady down and left that what happened in the river to be a past, you still seem to be carrying that lady in your mind. So more than my act of adharma, it is your act of adharma that is in your mind that you should be treating. So he says the mind is all powerful, right? So he had to do something, he did it, and after that, that was it. No more attachment. This is what Krishna said in the Gita, isn't it? Do not attach yourself to the fruits of your action. Even that fruits, you have to give it up. You have to renounce. Then, yes, you're fine. That is how you start controlling the mind. Otherwise, the mind will say, take credit for this, take credit for this, expect reward, expect award, expect recognition. And that's where the trouble starts. Okay. So Rama, the ever obedient son, told his father, as you wish, father. Now, just compare this to the modern generation, right? I mean, most of you will know when you tell your children do something, what sort of response you get, right? So it was announced, tomorrow is the Raja Abhisheka and the Raja, coronation of Rama as the new king of Ayodhya. So the crown prince Rama will take over Dasaratha as the new king of Ayodhya. Now, Mantara, Kaikeyi's maid, right? Of course, 3 wives, right? Kaikeyi is the youngest wife. Kaikeyi's maid, right? The main person who waits on her, Kaikeyi, heard this. And for some reason, she was not very happy, right? And she wanted to go and talk to Kaikeyi, and they're basically plotting a chaos. The significance here is where there is good, evil will always be lurking around. And it just looks for an opportunity, right? That opportunity comes, it will seep through, right? That is why you always have to keep yourself in check, because the base mind is capable of being corrupted, influenced. Even an evolved spiritual mind can fall prey to this kind of, evil that is lurking around. That is why they say you need to keep your mind in constant check. And Swami said, do Ramasmarana all the time. Japa mala, continuous repetition is continuous eradication of all this from your mind, right? So all the great gurus that have come and gone, even they were checked to see whether at all times they were focused, one pointed, ekadrishti, one pointed vision towards that spiritual goal. You remember I told you when I did Bhajagovindam, I told you about Shankaracharya, where Lord Shiva approached him as a Chandala and tested him. And Shankara was walking with his disciples, and this fellow was in the way, and Shankara says, move out of my way. I have to pass through. And then the Chandala says, what do you want me to move? Myself, or the self that is, invisible, or the self that is I, or all three? At that point, Shankara already knew, because he's got a hit, right? He's got a hit because he knew, oh my God, only Lord Shiva can speak like this. So Raghavendra, Ramana Maharishi, Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, all of them were tested at some point or another. So you need to use intelligence to dictate to the mind, right? And as I always say, right, when wisdom speaks, intelligence listens. When intelligence speaks, mind must comply, right? Even in the Purusha Shuktam, right? Most of you who recite the Purusha Shuktam, I'm sure you know, there's one part that comes, Tvameva vitvan na iha bhavati nanyah pantha ayanaya vidyate. That part, if you look at the meaning, it says one can attain mukti or liberation even whilst on earth, so long as one exercises right knowledge, right? Samyak jnana, it's called, right? Samyak jnana, eka trishti jnana. So after that, Brahma comes and talks to Narada and he goes away, right? Now Narada and Valmiki are still conversing. And I'll come back to Ayodhya in a minute because this is important. So Valmiki, after Brahma goes, asks Narada, Kim dushkaram naram? Kim dushkaram naranam? That means he's asking, why is human life so difficult, O Narada? Kim dushkaram naranam? Narada Rishi. And Narada says, Yan manaso nigraha satatham. Yan manaso, that means the mind. Grahaha means it's in constant control. Nigrahaha means is not in constant control. Satatham means always, right? So Narada replies to Valmiki's question of Kim dushkaram naranam. And Narada says, Yan manaso nigrahaha satatham. Because the mind is not kept in constant control. That's why the problem is there. And this is a perfect example of Kaikeyi, right? All this while she was fine because the mind was, not engaged with any evil thoughts. But the moment the opportunity came, she was thinking how to get, of course, if you read different versions of the stories, right, she always had something against Rama because, when they were young, very young, right, whilst they were playing a game, Rama threw something and it went and hit her. And, from that day, she said, you hit me, one day I'll get back to you. But that's another story. And it is totally got no relevance, right? We are talking about the mind. So focus on the mind. All good things are happening and then some bad things are waiting in the form of Kaikeyi, right? Now, this is happening in Ayodhya. Ayodhya is the city. And of course, Rama is going to become the king of Ayodhya. Now, do you know Ayodhya? Of course, from a Ramayana perspective, we know it's the great city, kingdom of Ayodhya, right? But how does it relate to us at a human level? The human body is Ayodhya. The mind, if not controlled, becomes the king. And of course, as the king, so the country. Yat mano tat manushyaha, right? As the king, so the country. So Ayodhya means the body. And of course, Dasaratha should be the mind who's controlling Ayodhya. And of course, the next one is Rama should be controlling the mind. So basically, right, in the Atharvana Veda, if you look, it says, it's talking about the sun, and it says, Ashta Chakra Navadvara Devanam Puryodhyaha. Ashta Chakra Navadvara Devanam Puryodhyaha. That means the gods treat Ayodhya like their own city. Why? Because it's got Ashta Chakra and Navadvara. Ashta Chakra means 8 gates. Sorry, 8 corners, right? Ashtadik Palaka. Remember, I said to you, Ashtadik, north, east, southwest, northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast. So it's got gates. It's got corners, 8 corners, right? Ashta Chakra. Navadvara means 9 gates. So Ayodhya is basically a city that is impenetrable. If you translate that to the human person, the human body, right, has got 8 points and 9 gates. 9 gates. Gates means something can go in, something can come out, right? So what is this? This is where you need to pay some attention, right? Because I'm going to talk to you about this concept a bit more. This is Navadvara. Navadvara. Nava means 9, Dwara means gates, openings, orifices, right? 7 chakras. Mind and intellect is 9. So we say 7 chakras, right? But if you go to the science, there are 9 chakras, out of which, 2 are latent, and that is the mind and the intellect, right? Manas and Buddhi. 7 chakras plus Manas plus Buddhi is 9, right? They are called Nava chakras, right? But of course, if you take out the latent part, which is the mind and the intellect, you have 7 chakras. Then, of course, something that is very, very natural to humans, that is the birth of a human being. This is called Navamasa, or 9 months, right? From the day of conception to the birth, it has been calculated to 279 days. And of course, if you divide that by 9, you get 27.9. You divide that by 10, then you get about 30, just under, right? And if you add up 279, it adds up to 9. This is called Navamasha, 9 months, right? And then the human body has 9 orifices, 9 openings. This is called Navadvara or Navarandhras, right? Navarandhras. It is said that, the body of a human being has 9 exit points, Navadvara, right? Of course, the soul, when a person dies, the soul will leave the body through one of these 9 points, right? That's been written. These are 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, 2, 4, 6, 1 mouth, and 2 excretory organs, right? So it's 9. 2, 4, 6, 7, and 2 excretory organs, 9. So these are called Navadvaras. And then, of course, when Lakshmana was toppled by Meghananda, right? It was Hanuman who went and got the Sanjeevani. And the Sanjeevani was mixed with 9 herbs. This is called Navapasha, right? And for those of you who've been to the temple in South India called Palani, a great temple for Lord Subramanya or Muruga, Palani is famed because of the Navapasha, the 9 herbs that was made by a Siddhar called Bhogar. So even if you think this is happening in the 7th avatar in Treta Yuga, if you remember when I did Bhagavad Gita with you, when I did chapter 5 with you, I spoke to you what Krishna said. Sarva karmani manastanyas yaste sukham vashihi navadhware pure dehi naiva kurvan nakaryan. He's telling the embodied beings who are self-controlled and detached reside happily in the city of 9 gates. They are free from thinking that they indeed are the doers. See, even then, Krishna refers to the 9 gates. Navadvare pure dehi naiva kurvan nakaryavan. Fantastic, right? So this shows that the Ithihasas are consistent in terms of factual representations, right? So Krishna compared the body, when he's telling Arjuna, compared the body to the 9 openings. And the soul is like the king of the city. And of course, the city is the human body. And the soul has the power to exercise sufficient or to exert sufficient intellectual wisdom on the body so as to control the ego, the mind, the senses, everything, in order to reign continuously in a dharmic way until it is time for the soul to go, right? Until death comes. And this is called Sakshi Bhava, right? The attitude of being detached from being attached, right, to everything that is happening around you. Okay, so now coming back to Manthara and Kaikeyi. Manthara in Sanskrit means the one who is humpbacked, humpbacked. It derives from the word mantaha. Mantaha also means dense, right? The absence of intellect, right? Dense. And of course, manthara also means something that you use to churn. And of course, when you churn something, everything goes up and down, isn't it? It completely gets topsy-turvy, upside down, mixed up. So Kaikeyi was fine until Manthara exercised her churning ability to churn the calm mind of Kaikeyi, who initially dismisses it, but eventually falls for Manthara's, continuous churning. Oh, no, you have to stop this, you have to stop this, you have to stop this. It's just like, when the ocean of milk, the Shira Sagara was being churned, the Devas on one side, the Asuras on one side, Vasugi was used as the rope, and Mount Mandara was used as, the turning, the implement to turn. And of course, because there's no base, the tortoise was used, turtle was used as base, and they turned. And what came out first? The halhala poison came out first. That's when Shiva came and drank it. So likewise, the moment you start churning things, definitely it's going to become halhala first, right? First halhala came. Then only, Dhanvantri Deva came with the Veda, all the, natural healing possibilities, right? So Kaikeyi gives in. So Kaikeyi is the body and Mantra is the mind. The moment the body gives into the mind, that is the beginning of problems, because desire and attachment, once it takes over, you're finished. Desire and attachment, once it takes over, you are finished. So in this Ayodhya Kanda, Mantra is the mind and Kaikeyi is the body. When the body gives into the mind, finish, right? So Kaikeyi gives in after a while. And Mantra tells her, look, you should insist that Bharata, your son, be made the king. But then Kaikeyi says, but Rama is also my son. I love him very dearly. And Kaikeyi and Mantra says, don't be stupid. Your son will never be the king. You know why? Because if Rama is made the king and Rama has a son, then the son becomes the king. If the son has another son, then the son becomes the king. And that's it. You can forget about your son ever becoming the king. And then Kaikeyi says, but Dasaratha is my dear husband. How can I go against him? And Kaikeyi says, Mantra says, you don't worry. Do you remember when you saved his life in battle once and he gave you 2 boons? And Kaikeyi says, yeah. Go and ask him now for that boon, right? I mean, this happened when, Dasaratha was expanding his kingdom, once at war with a Rakshasa called Samba Asuraha, right? And he was hurt. And just before, he could have been killed, Kaikeyi went, she was at the camp, and then she went on a horse and she saved him and she brought him back, healed him. And then he subsequently managed to win the war after killing Sambasura. And of course, he gave Kaikeyi that boon. He says, you can ask me 2 things at any point in time, I will grant you that, right? And of course, Lord Indra also appeared at the time and says, yes, that's the right thing to do, right? So 2 boons to Kaikeyi, which she completely forgot until Manthara reminded her, you have these 2 boons. Go and ask Dasaratha. He cannot say no to you. And of course, once the body is so influenced by the mind is Manthara, body is Kaikeyi, she had to go. Also remember, when I talked to you about karma, right? I said to you, karma will just wait. When the time is right, it will strike. And when it strikes, it does not concern itself with the circumstances, because karma is the new circumstance. Okay. So Kaikeyi then, asks to see Dasaratha, and she goes. And of course, it is the least expected as far as Dasaratha concerned. As far as Dasaratha is concerned, he does not even think for a minute that Kaikeyi is going to ask him something like this. So she says, you remember this, at the war you gave me 2 boons. Now I want you to give me those 2 boons. Dasaratha says, of course, my dear, ask me and I will give. And she says, you will not say no to me, you will not go back on your word. He says, I am Dasaratha. Once I give my word, I never go back on it. And she says, banish Rama. My first wish is banish Rama to Danda Aranyaka. That's the forest, the name of the forest, for 14 years. I'll tell you why 14 in a few minutes. And then she said, the second wish is you must crown Bharatha as the king of Ayodhya. You remember when I spoke to you about in Balakandha, right? Or even in the introduction. And I said to you about Bharatha. I said to you, Bharatarajya Varanaha. I said, Bharatha is one who has the capacity to rule the kingdom. Bharatha, Bharatarajya Varanaha. That means now that opportunity is coming. Dasaratha was so shocked. He pleads, he cries, he appeals, but Kaikeyi was not budging. This is the power of desire. Remember, she is so influenced by Mantara that, the power of desire, it will control and it will rule you aimlessly and bring you to a spot of despondency, total despondency and total destruction. So Rama was summoned, and with a heavy, heavy heart, in tears, right? Dasaratha tells him, you have to go to the forest for 14 years. And you know what was Rama's response? Rama smiles. That is why one of Rama's names is Mandahasa. Mandahasa means one who always smiles, more than doing anything else. And you have, lots of bhajans with the word Mandahasa. Amba Mandahasa Vadani Manohari Sai Janani. Mandahasa, one who smiles, always smiles, So Rama saw Kaikeyi was there. He said, Amma, you could have just told me and I would have gone happily instead of putting father through such distress. Even at that time, you see, Rama is a man of Pitruvakya Paripalanaha. Pitruvakya Paripalanaha. That means one who thinks that the ultimate dharma is to obey your father regardless of what. Just like the avatar before him. What was the avatar before Rama? Parashurama. Parashurama was another example of Pitruvakya Paripalanaha. That means whatever the father said, he does. Father said, behead your mother, and he did. The father was so pleased, say, ask me a boon. And he says, reinstate my mother and my 4 brothers whom I killed because you told me to do that. And when you reinstate them, they should not remember what has happened to them. That is dharma, right? Anyway, Pitruvakya Paripalanaha, Rama. So he said, okay, I will go, right? Now, why 14 years? It's good. Remember, I have mentioned this before in one of my talks, or maybe more than one of my talks. When you talk about the lokas, if you talk about the Gayatri mantra, there are 7 lokas: Bhur, Bhuva, Suvaha, Maha, Janaha, Tapaha, Satyam. Right? 7 lokas. So 7 lokas going up. Bhur, Bhuva, Suvaha, Taha, Maha, Tapaha, Janaha, Satyam. Right? 7 up, then 7 down as well. Atala, Sutala, Vitala, Rasatala, Mahatala, Talatala, and Patala. 7 lokas going down. So 7 plus 7 is 14. 7 to eradicate all the negativities and 7 to rise and go up to heaven, right? So 14 years signifies spiritual growth after destruction of base qualities. Right? So if someone asks me once, so how long does it take for you to transfer and transform, right? So I said 14 years. So why? Yeah, because if you want to grow upwards spiritually, first you must build a foundation. You must go down, destroy all the base qualities, all the negative qualities, and then work your way up. So that is one explanation of 14 years. 7 lokas up, 7 lokas down signifies spiritual growth by destroying base qualities. 7 down, 7 up, right? The other one is you have 10 senses, right? 5 pancha indriyas, 5 jnana indriyas, right? 5 organic senses, 5 senses of perception. Then you have got 4 other, mano, buddhi, chitta, and ahamkara. Mano, buddhi, chitta, and ahamkara, 4. Mind, intellect, memory or thoughts, and ego. So 10 plus 4, 14. This is called as Navapancha Varshani. Navapancha Varshani, that means 14 years. So that is the reason why that has happened, right? So Rama has to be away for 14 years. Rama says, okay. I'll go. I'll say goodbye to my mother. First, he took Kaikeyi's blessings. Dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. You see, he has never failed in his dharma. And he never thought once, why are they asking me to go? Go, and he's going. Not a single question. Why do you want me to go? Why? Tomorrow you are the one who said I should be crowned as king. Now you ask, no, nothing. Be king as you wish. Go to the forest as you wish. Pitruvakya paripalanaha. Right? I told you, Rama is Maryada Purushottama, Dharma Purusha, Dharmajna, right? So he does everything because that's the right thing to do. Right thing to do, right? So he says, takes his blessing. Of course, his father cannot see him, right? Just turns away and says, no, nothing. So moved, right? That he has, it's like taking a knife, poking one of your eyes and taking your eyes out, right? So he just breaks down and he's crying, and Rama then leaves the Dasaratha's room and he goes to Lakshmana's room. And when he tells Lakshmana he's going, Lakshmana becomes angry. Remember I told you, Lakshmana takes his sword and says, who has done this? Tell me, and I will put an end to them. He consoles Lakshmana. Lakshmana is sitting there crying. He leaves and he's going to say bye to Sita. Can you imagine her shock? Can you imagine her shock? Life has just begun for them, right? Rama says, I am only leaving for a short while. In the meantime, it is very important for you to stay here and look after Kausalya, Sumitra, and Kaikeyi, my 3 mothers. You see, right? How would any of us have reacted had we been in the position of Rama? She did this to me. I must have my revenge at one point. If not today, one day I will come for you, right? But no, Rama tells Sita to stay behind and look after his 3 mothers. Remember last week I told you, Janani Janma Bhumischa Swargapi Yagi. His mother and motherland are no different to me. Janani Janma Bhumischa Swargapi Gariyasi. So Sita is also crying. She says, no, I will have to come with you. Because, just like Rama is a Pitruvakya Paripalanaha, Sita is a Pativrataha. That means she is one who worships the husband, and wherever the husband stands, his feet is her abode. She says, your pada is my mandra. Mandra is in mandram, right? Not mantra, mandra. Abode. That's what it means. Remember who she really is. She's Mahalakshmi, constantly at the feet of Mahavishnu. So, of course, they don't know that. But as Rama, she's telling, look, wherever you are, your feet is my abode. So, I am not going to be here. I have to go where you go. You have to take me. Otherwise, I'm not having this. You can't go. I'm not giving you permission to go. You see, that those days, right, permission was so important, so fundamental. Nothing was done without getting the permission. Today, everything goes, right? Everything goes. You do first, then you tell I've done it, not even ask permission. Then as they were having this exchange, Lakshmana comes in and he says, you're not going alone. I'm going to come with you because, I've always been with you. I cannot stay alone. But you're married. I don't want to, no, don't worry about that. And of course, we know about Urmila, how she went to sleep for 14 years, right? Anyway, we're not going into that. So what does, up until now, right, all that I've said to you, let's pause for a minute and think, what does this teach us? What are the lessons that emanate from what has taken place so far? Well, Rama lived an exemplary life of dharma, right? Correct? But yet he underwent so many trials and tribulations. This is what I said to you. This is bhakti, quality check, right? Quality control. So, moha or desires is the cause of all grief and sorrow. This again, we looked at in Bhagavad Gita, and we also looked at Bhaja Govindam. See, the same messages come at different times by different people, but singing the same hymn, right? Anyway, Kaikeyi desire, because she was overtaken by mantras, thought poisoning. And of course, at a later stage, Sita's desire to get the golden deer, right, also gave rise to grief and sorrow. So, moha, desire, that's another lesson from this. Then remember, when I did 3 weeks of karma with you, I spoke about prarabdha karma, karmic fruits. Remember, there's one point where I made mention of Dasaratha killing Shravana Kumar, son of an aged or disabled couple. Then they curse Dasaratha and say, you will suffer just like us. You will lose your son who's most dearest to you, and you will go through and suffer the same fate. Prarabdha karma. Now it's coming back to hit Dasaratha, right? Sumitra and Urmila, right? Both were willing to sacrifice Lakshmana. Sumitra is the mother, Urmila is the wife, right? Son and her son and husband, right? Sumitra's son and Urmila's husband. Sumitra advises Lakshmana. This is a great lesson for us, right? Always be in the service of Rama and Sita. And Urmila says, I don't want to be awake. And Lakshmana tells her, say this sleeping mantra, you'll be asleep until I come back. All right? Anyway, that's another thing. Then the fifth thing is the lesson of universal brotherhood, right? Rama meets Guha, the boatman, is actually the king, right? Guhan. And of course, as a king, and he's heard so much of Rama, he just Rama accept him as a normal human being. In fact, says, he's the brother. This shows that there is only one caste, the caste of humanity, as Bhagavan says, right? And of course, the last thing is never act against our own true self. Never listen or give in to the mind, because the mind can be influenced by negative forces. Again, Kaikeyi and Mantara is the example. Always exercise intelligence or wisdom, right? And of course, it's time for them to leave. Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana. Eventually, they all agreed, okay, you both can come with me, right? They leave Ayodhya, leaving all the richly clothes, gifts, everything, and they just wear ochre robes, orange color robes. They leave. They bid farewell to Ayodhya, and they start going towards the forest, right? Towards the bank of Ganga. So if you think today, I looked up the map, right? It's traveling south from Uttar Pradesh, about 150 kilometers down south. And Ayodhya is in the state of Uttar Pradesh, and it's by the side of a holy river called Sarayu Nadi, right? So they start their journey, and then they arrive at the bank of Ganga, at the bank of Ganges, at the kingdom of Nishadraj Guha, right? Nishadraj Guha. And of course, King Guha was waiting there, right? He meets them at a place called Shringavedpuram and personally escorts them to cross the river Ganga. Right, Guha, the boatman, who was the king, who became the boatman to get Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana across. Guha in Sanskrit means resident of the cave, or Guhan, right? One of Lord Subramania's name is Guha. This means, the ultimate reality is God lives in the heart of everybody. That's why you say, when you say Sai Ram, or when you say Namaskar, or when you say any greeting, it has to come from the heart. And that is why they pray and they put their hands together, because your five senses of perception, your five senses of organic senses, jnana indriyas and karma indriyas, are balanced. And from the heart chakra, which you are, touching, you are saying Sai Ram, Namaskar, or something like that. So, the whole self is vibrating as you say that greeting. And that's how it should be said each time, every time, all the time, right? So, Guha is the king. He says, I will ferry you across, but I'm the king. Let me build you just outside the river, by the river, by the forest. You're actually in the forest, but you're not deep inside. You're just on the outskirts of the forest. I can build you a beautiful place for you to stay, and I will stay here with you for the 14 years. Rama just hugs him because he was touched by Guha's compassion. He embraces Guha and says, I have 3 other brothers. You are my 4th brother. So there are 5 of us in my family. This shows universal brotherhood, right? So he takes them across the river Ganga, and then of course he goes back. Guha goes back, and he says, anytime you need help, just send word and I will come. Now what is important is now they're going into the forest, right? They cross 3 very important rivers, right? For specific reasons, right? They cross the river Vedashruti. This is the place where Agastya Maharishi is another great, his ashrama is there. And the second river is River Gomati. This is the place of Vamadeva Rishi, right? Vamadeva Rishi, another great Rishi whose Lord Shiva's, in primary. And then there's another river called River Shandika. So they cross all these 3 mighty rivers, and they reach, at the outskirts of the deeper side of the forest called Chitrakut. As he landed himself there, suddenly the Asura called Virada Asura comes out. And of course, Rama takes his. Remember, Vishwamitra has taught them all this, right? He slays Virada, And, then the path becomes clear and he can see Sarabhanga Rishi and Sudikshana Rishi. Their ashrama is there. And of course, they bless him and they lead him to Agastya Maharishi's ashrama. Of course, Agastya is, a dwarf-sized rishi who is a dynamite. And as they say, dynamites come in small packages, right? He is another one of those superb rishis, right? Who knows everything. And Agastya, I told you, these great rishis have something called Jnana Drishti, right? Agastya, the moment he sees Rama, he already knows, Bhagavan, Vishnu, he's thinking, he's not saying, because they are bound by this, what you call Satyavak, right? So he says, very good, I heard about your grand victory with Viradasura. So as a result of my appreciation, here's a bow, right? The mighty bow of Lord Indra called Indradhanush, right? Indradhanush. And Indradhanush is known because it has inexhaustible supply of arrows. All you have to do is just string it. Boom, 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 boom. The arrows will keep coming, right? And of course, Agastya also gave Rama Vishnu's sword that Vishnu himself uses, right? When he's Veera Vishnu, right? And he fights. Now, why is Agastya giving Rama this? Why did Vishwamitra give him, another bow, Pinakini and all of that? Why? Because God will prepare you and send you what you need at the right time. Don't have to worry. They all knew why Rama had taken birth. Of course, they will, do the right thing at the right time and prepare him aptly so that he can go and do what he is meant to do. This entire avatar was taken so that, Ravana could be defeated. So, of course, all this is slowly and surely preparing Rama towards that aim or that goal, rather, right? And of course, Agastya is not just here where he crops up. He crops up in several other kandas, like Ayodhya Kanda after this next week, Ayodhya Kanda, and of course, Uttarakhanda as well, right? Particularly, I will make mention of Agastya Maharishi in Yuddha Kandam, because that is where he teaches Rama the victorious mantra of Sri Aditya Hridayam, something that you say to the sun. Tato yutta parishrantam samare chintaya sthitham Ravanam chagrado dustva ruddhaya samupastitham devaya deva bhadraya, like that. It goes. Fantastic mantra, right? This is propitiating the sun, and the sun gives you that amount of brilliance for you to destroy anything that comes in your way. That is the mantra that Agastya Maharishi taught Rama. And Rama used that mantra to actually, before he hit the he hit the arrow that killed Ravana, he recited that. Anyway, more about that when I do Yuddha Kanda with you, right? So, after receiving these, Indradhanush and Vishnu sword from Agastya Maharishi, they continued their journey. And after that, they reached after 2 or 3 days, they reached another rishis. Remember, they were sent to Aranyaka forest because this forest is well known for a great number of rishis doing tapasya there. So they had a role to play, right? So one of the roles was adharma. Dharma will come and finish it, right? Like that. So adharma was happening because all these rishis couldn't finish their tapas. They couldn't finish their havans and the yajnas. So Rama was sent initially to Vishwamitra, but Vishwamitra already prepared him because he knew this thing is going to happen. Rama has to be aptly prepared. So he was going into this deeper and deeper and killing all the forests, right? All the asuras. Of course, when they met Bharatvaja Rishi, right? Bharatvaja Rishi also instantly is Jnana Drishti, right? All these Maharishis, they have this Jnana Drishti, they can see clearly. And of course, when I spoke to you about Bhagavad Gita, I told you Krishna said there are 4 types of people who can reach God quick, and one category is called Jnanis, okay? So this is like Bharatvaja Rishi is Jnani. And of course, you have, and Bharatvaja Rishi is one who told Rama how to continue his journey. He said, you have to go to Chitrakoot forest now. This is the next stage of your journey. Right? And of course, Swami's Gotra is Bharatvaja Rishi. Om Sri Sai Bharatvaja Rishi Gotraya Namaha. Om Sri Sai Bhaktavatsalaya Namaha. Om Sri Sai Avantaratmane Namaha. Om Sri Sai Avataramurthaye Namaha. Like that. Bharatvaja Rishi Gotraya Namaha. So, Bharatvaja Rishi, right? Another very famous, powerful Rishi who showed Rama continuous journey where you have to go. So they went, then they crossed another part of the Ganga, and they reached the place where the hill is and the holy confluence of Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati. This is known as Prayag, or in modern times we call it Triveni Sangam. Triveni Sangam means the meeting of 3 holy rivers, right? the holy confluence of Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati. It's a fantastic experience to go there, right? It's in a place called Allahabad in Uttar Pradesh, right? Now, I've been there several times. Once I also went with my wife, and you have to take a boat out to the area where, I mean, the boat is about another half an hour, 40-minute journey into the middle of the, where the rivers meet. So there's one part where all three rivers meet. You can see Ganga and Yamuna, but you cannot see Saraswati because she's the undercurrent, right? So that particular place, what they've done is they built like a floating platform. So all the boats that take people, they go park themselves around. And what the people on the boat do is, the last time I went, this happened to me, right? About 3 years ago. They tie your feet with a rope and tie it to the boat, right? And then they say, okay, now you can get onto the platform and go and have a dip. Because the current, Saraswati is so powerful, right? And thankfully they did that, because the moment I went and dip, I was going, but because of the, the rope that was tied to my leg, they managed to pull me out, right? Anyway, so if you ever get a chance to go, you must go to this place. It's because we went to Kashi, Varanasi, to do some prayers there. And then as part of it, we went to Allahabad, we went to Triveni Sangam, and we went to Gaya. Gaya is another powerful place to do prayers. So we went there, and this is called the Triveni Sangam. And Rama, Lakshmana, and Sita had also gone there. They'd also taken, bath there, and then they continued, right? So it became a sacred because of that. And they said a dip at the point where all the three rivers, meet. The point of confluence of these three rivers, Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, said to flush away all the sins and free you from the cycle of birth again, right? So they arrived at Rishi Bharadwaja's, and he told them to go and meditate, right? From Prayag, said you have to go to Chitrakoot and meditate. Now, why Chitrakoot? Because if you take Chitrakoot, 3 words, right? Chitrakoot, Chit means Chittam, knowledge, thoughts, Chitta, right? Ra means that which is, Kut means in a state of tranquility. So Chitrakoot is a place where if you go and meditate, your knowledge or your thoughts will be in a state of tranquility. And that is why the Chitrakoot washes away all sins and leads to your brighter future. And that is why Rama was asked to go there by Rishi Bharadwaja and say, you have to meditate here. And of course, the Rishis know why they ask them to do these things. Now, let me take you back to Ayodhya now. Now, in Ayodhya, all this has happened. Rama has gone, right? It's been 5 days since Rama has left Ayodhya. Remember, Bharata and Shatrughna are not there. They were away on palatial business, right? They were outside the city, in another kingdom. Dasaratha has been, since Rama left, in an absolute state of grief. He cries and confesses to Kausalya, but the day that thing happened, he did not go back to Kaikeyi, right? He just remained in his chambers because he was so, he couldn't take that separation. Remember, prarabdha karma, right? How, Shravana Kumar's parents suffered when he was, it's a mistake, but even a mistake has consequences, Still, on the 6th night, Dasaratha dies. Very sad. He dies. And Dasaratha's death also symbolizes one thing, right? Attachment. So there was no nitsanga, there was no satsanga, right? There was only attachment on his part. So he couldn't take that separation. As a result of this deep attachment, he couldn't manage the separation. So he dies. He dies on the 6th night. Then, of course, as a result of this death, Bharata and Shatrughna are summoned back to Ayodhya. When they came, Bharata returns and he discovers everything that has happened, and he cannot believe that in a few days, so many things could have taken. This is why life is so uncertain. And you remember when I did Bhajagovindam with you, I said, Nalini dalagata jalamati taralam tatvat jivita adisiya chapalam divyadi abhivana grastham lokam shokam hatam cha samastam Bhajagovindam govindam bhajamudamate samprapte sannihite kale nahi rakshati dukhin karani. Nalini dalagata jalamati taralam. Life is so uncertain. It's like a droplet of water on the leaf, precariously hanging. At any time it can slip away. So do the right thing at the right time for the right reason to the right person, and you'll get the right result, right? So Vashishta, who's the Kula Guru, right? The guru for the entire um, Dasaratha clan, he says, you have to perform the last rites in the absence of Rama, right? You're the second born, so you have to do it. And of course, it was your father's wish that you take over the throne. Bharata says, no, I will not do this. He says, I want to go and see my mother. And he went to see his mother. And of course, they had some exchange of words. And he says, how could you? I will never forgive you. I am going to go and look for Rama, and I'm going to bring Rama and my sister-in-law and my my brother Lakshmana back. And then I will deal with you again. Shatrughna says, brother, where you go, I will come. Remember, who's Bharata and Shatrughna? Changa Chakra, right? Adishesha, Mahalakshmi, and Mahavishnu have gone. Now these two are hanging about, right? So they said, no, we are not going to be here. We are going to go and look for Rama and bring him back, right? Vashishta says, you cannot go until you finish your father's karya, Antyesh, right? So Bharata does that, but he doesn't take the throne. He says, let me go and do what I have to do. You see, this lesson for us here is unity in diversity. Unity in diversity. Of course, they take their army and they leave. Right? And after a few days, they reach Chitrakoot. The same journey they followed, met the same people and showed them where they are. When Bharata and Shatrughna reach the forest where Rama and Lakshmana are, the entire energy of the forest changed. All the animals began to get into a frenzy. Things became uneasy, and Rama could feel a sense of this uneasiness in the air. So he says to Lakshmana, something is happening, Lakshmana. Go and find out, go and see if everything is okay. So Lakshmana goes, and then he could see after about few minutes of walking, he could see the entire army is there. When he saw the army, the first thought that came is, maybe they have come to attack him, right? He knows it is from Ayodhya, right? Lakshmana thought, army troops, oh my God, and he could see Bharata waiting there. He said, Bharata maybe had come to do the king's bidding, right? He said, something else must have happened. So he ran back. You see, when mind is influenced by thoughts, the thoughts can even make you go against your near and your dear. Bharata is the brother of Lakshmana. So how can Lakshmana think that Bharata is coming to harm them? That's because the mind is not balanced, not checked, not in constant control. So he rushes back to Rama and says, look, Bharata and Shatrughna have come with the entire army. I think they are looking for us. They are going to harm us. Rama says, Lakshmana, calm down. What are you talking about? Do you know who Bharata is? Bharata is my brother, and my brothers do not act adharmically. Bharata is a person of dharmic consciousness, and he will never in 100 years have come here with that intention. Now, you go back and you bring Bharata and Shatrughna here. Leave the others, ask them to wait there. Just bring our two brothers back. Now, how well do you know your kith and kin? So Rama sends Lakshmana back, right? I just want you to think that how well do you know your brothers, your sisters, or your cousins, or whatever the case may be, right? Or are you the, precarious Lakshmana, or are you the balanced Rama, right? This is something for you to think about, right? So when Bharata meets Rama, he just falls onto his feet, hugs his feet, and breaks down, and says, "You have to come back, elder brother. You have to come back, but yeah, you have to come back. You have to rule Ayodhya as king. Forgive our mother. She knew not what she was saying. She was influenced by the evil mantara." Rama picks him up. First question. Now, I want you to examine Rama's mindset here, right? Rama picks him up and he says, how are my three dearest mothers? And how is my beloved father? He never answers, I will come back with you. I won't come back with you. How are my dearest mothers? And how is my beloved father? And when Bharata told him that Dasaratha has passed away, Rama just breaks down. He is overtaken by grief. He becomes inconsolable. Now, at this point, right, many people have asked me when I've spoken about this previously, right? They asked me, hey, how come Rama can cry like that? How can Rama lose his sentence? I said, look, when you hear your father or your mother has passed away, you won't cry. Rama is a normal man. He's not God. Right? He's not God. He's subject to all these feelings. So he cries because he's lost his father. Understand that he's a normal man. You are reading and you know he's the seventh avatar. He didn't know he was the seventh avatar. So how can you judge him on the basis of your knowledge and not his? Right? Rama was only a normal human being. Right? Then after a while, he gets back to composure, and then he goes to the Ganges, and he does his father's Antyashti, right? The final rites as the eldest son, King Dasaratha. And then he says to Bharata, Bharata, it was my father's wish that I come for 14 years and you rule the kingdom for 14 years. Right? Bharata says, no, brother, I will be with you for the 14 years. I will also become an ascetic and I will stay with you. And when we go back, you can rule the kingdom. Rama says, no, that is not what my father wanted. My father wanted you to be the king. He says, father only said that because of what Kaikeyi had demanded of him. Father only wanted you to be saved. Doesn't matter. It was his instruction to me as the eldest in the family. It is my duty to ensure that that instruction is carried out. Right? And Bharata says, okay, you want me to go back? I will go back, but I will not accept the kingdom. I will wait for you outside Ayodhya. When you come, I will go in. Otherwise, I will take Vanavasa, separately. So Bharata says, give me your sandals. I will put your sandals in the throne and I will rule as keeper of the throne, but I will not go into Ayodhya and rule it as the king. So Bharata, true to his word, then of course Bharata and Shatrughna leave, right? True to his word, he went back, put the Rama's sandals on the throne, did, some little puja there, and then he stayed outside on the outskirts of Ayodhya in a place called Nandi Grama, right? Now, you just think, look at the amount of unconditional love and the superb compliance with dharma here. In today's world, right? In today's world, how people fight and kill for power. And here is a man who was given a kingdom to rule, a superb kingdom to rule. And he says, for the love of my brother, I will not rule it. Give me your sandals. This is well called, if some of you read, you will come across a term called Rama Paduka Pattabhishekam. Pattabhishekam. That means, the Pattabhishekam is done for the person who's going to become king. The Pattabhishekam was done for Rama's Padukas. Right? Pa means path. Dvuka means nature or natural, right? So, Paduka Puja basically signifies, when you engage in Paduka Puja, it gives you a natural protection on the path that you are taking. The one that protects nature is naturally protected by that very nature. So that's Paduka, right? Of course, it means the holy feet as well. Then, of course, after after Bharata and Shatrughna leave, Rama, Sita and Lakshmana continue their journey. Rama says, no, this place is, Bharata has come, Shatrughna has come. I don't want to be here. I want to move away from here because I'll always be thinking of them. So they continue. And then after a few days, right, they came to a place called Ramghat. Now we call it as Ramghat, dense forest of Chitrakoot, right? And they came to a ashrama. This ashrama is where Rishi Atri Maharishi stays with his wife Anusuya Rishini, right? Atri, A3 or Na3, right? Atri means, 3 means the 3 gunas, right? Trai. A3 means the absence of the 3 gunas. That means this Rishi, Atri Maharishi, was called Atri when he had overtaken and controlled his 3 gunas. So, par excellence, right? Invokes, just by, saying few things, he can invoke Brahma, Vishnu or Shiva. That is how, when you overcome and when you subdue your 3 gunas, you become at that level, you were just vibrating with that, rhythmic excellence. Rhythmic excellence is just say, Brahma, Brahma comes like that, right? And his wife is called Anasuya. As I said to you, Asuya means jealousy. Anasuya means na asuya, means no jealousy, no envy, no greed. And of course, there have been times in Bhagavad Gita when Krishna refers to Arjuna as Anasuyave, Partha, Anasuyave. He says one who is beyond, jealousy, greed, envy, that kind of thing. So, why did he have to go to Atri Anusuya's ashrama? Because Rama also in his journey had to overcome the 3 gunas. and become a master. And of course, he had to become free of the three gunas and had to overcome jealousy or all those evil qualities, right? That is why he was pushed. At every stage of his journey into the Aranya forest, he was met by one rishi who empowered him in different ways. So that's why I said, when the right time comes, God will empower you and give you whatever you need to fight. So that actually brings us to the end of Ayodhya Kanda, right? So now they're actually going deep into the forest. This is called the Aranya Kanda, which I will speak to you about next week. Okay. Anyada sharanam nasti tvameva sharanam mamaha tasmat karunya bhavena raksha raksha rameshwara hari om tat sat sri Saishwararphanamastu. Sai Ram.